So we are still in our first part of the series in which we are discussing and motivating ourselves to make dua. And inshallah today or tomorrow we'll finish this segment and then we'll move on to the second part, which is how to maximize the potential of our dua, the etiquettes of dua. And then inshallah we'll conclude at the end of the month with mentioning in particular the names of Allah that we should use during dua. So that's our overall chart, what we're doing. And today inshallah we're going to try to conclude, if not then tomorrow we'll conclude about some of the motivations to make dua. We've spoken about dua when it comes to theology, iman, ibadah, dua when it comes to a person's psychology, the importance of dua, how much Allah loves dua. In our last lesson I had mentioned a very important fact, which is every dua is answered. And there is a hadith that we didn't have time to mention, but it is especially relevant to this point, so I needed to go back a little bit and mention this hadith so that we have a better understanding of Allah's ijabah to our dua. This is an authentic hadith narrated in the Musnad and the Sunan of Abu Dawood. Our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Yustajabu li ahadikum." Allah will continue to answer your dua as long as you ask for something halal, ma lam yasta'jil, as long as the person is not hasty. Allah will give your ijabah as long as you are not hasty. One of the Sahaba said, Ya Rasulullah, how can I be hasty in dua? What does it mean to be hasty? Isti'jal. Listen to this. The Prophet ﷺ said, to be hasty in dua, to not have patience is dua, is that a man says, قَدْ دَعَوْتُ فَلَمْ أَرَى يَسْتَجِيبُ لِي فَيَدَعُ الدُّعَى. A man is making dua and he says, I'm making dua, and I don't think Allah will answer my dua. So he gives up hope of a response and he stops making dua. That is being hasty in dua. Now this hadith is so profound because the beginning of the hadith says Allah is giving ijabah, and the end of the hadith says the man thinks Allah is not giving me ijabah. Do you see the irony here? The one condition that will cause Allah to not answer your dua is when you presume Allah will not answer your dua. That is the negating factor. This is the irony here, that so many times we stop making dua because we assume Allah is not replying, Allah is not responding, and because of that assumption Allah will not respond. Otherwise, if we don't have that presumption and we have husn al-dhan, good thoughts in Allah, and we continue to make dua, the Prophet ﷺ used the continuous verb, yustajabu. Dua will be continued to be responded to any one of you as long as you are not hasty. And this hadith is super relevant and important because it shows us the difference between the mindset of the one who doesn't understand ijabah. He is thinking ijabah is exactly as I wanted. And as I explained in the last lesson, ijabah can be one of three things. Either you get what you want, or every time you ask Allah, Allah will give you credit, thawab. Every single time you ask, you will get a credit. And so you're getting ijabah. Or every single time you ask, some calamity will be alleviated or lifted. So your ijabah is coming. How can you stop making dua? So that was the point related to our last lesson. We move on today. Again, we're incentivizing. The goal right now for the first part of our lessons is to make us genuinely eager to make dua. Of the blessings of dua, Allah Azza wa Jal links victory multiple times with dua. Allah has given the most magnificent military victories because of dua. Again, read the Quran. How many times? Again, time is limited. We'll just mention one or two. Of the battles that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praises in the Quran is the battle that Dawood alayhi salam was a part of against Goliath. This is one of the most historic battles, right? In all of, pre-Islamic history. When David took on Goliath, Allah mentions in the Quran that فَلَمَّا بَرَزُوا لِجَالُوتَ, when they are in the army waiting against Jalut, when they're on the army field, the battlefield, قالوا ربنا أفرغ علينا صبرا وثبت أقدامنا وانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. Dawood and the believers made dua to Allah. Oh Allah, make our feet firm. And oh Allah, give us patience. And oh Allah, give us victory over those kuffar people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, therefore their Lord responded to them. Therefore, the fa is the clausal. Because of this dua, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, فَهَزَمُوهُمْ بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them victory over Jalut. A small group of unarmed people taking on the mighty Goliath. And what was their weapon? Their weapon was dua. And Allah explicitly links their victory to the dua that they made. Read the Quran again. Read the seerah again. One of the most, in fact, the most historic battle in the seerah is the Battle of Badr. The most historic battle in the seerah is the Battle of Badr. Once again, how does Allah link the victory? To what does Allah link the victory? Again, read the Quran. إِذْ تَسْتَغِيثُونَ رَبَّكُمْ. When you were begging Allah for help with your dua. Istighatha is to beg Allah for help. إِذْ تَسْتَغِيثُونَ رَبَّكُمْ. When you were making istighatha to Allah, asking Allah for ghawth, for help. فَاسْتَجَابَ لَكُمْ أَنِّي مُمِدُّكُمْ. Because you made that dua, Allah responded to you. And Allah said, I'm going to give you 1,000 angels that will fight on your behalf. Once again, notice the causal linkage. Because of your dua, your Lord responded to you. Because you asked, Allah gave you victory. I ask you by Allah, if dua can overcome the army of Goliath, if dua can overcome the army of the Quraysh, 3 against 1 the odds were, then how about my problems and your problems, which are so trivial compared to Goliath, compared to the army of Quraysh? If dua can help Dawood and the Prophet ﷺ overcome massive armies, then how about me and you? What about our problems in life? Your dua is your weapon. Your dua will help you overcome your calamities. And one other motivation, inshallah, and then we'll continue tomorrow with our final lecture about the motivations of dua. Then we move on to the etiquettes of dua. One other important benefit of dua. Dua transcends societies and civilizations and makes the ummah one in dua. Dua is one of the bonds that makes all of us one together. Dua solidifies the ummah regardless of time and place and location. Dua helps the ummah become one. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this in the Quran, that one of the etiquettes of the believers is they make dua for all the believers. وَالَّذِينَ جَاءُوا مِن بَعْدِهِمْ يَقُولُونَ رَبَّنَا اغْفِرْ لَنَا وَلِإِخْوَانِنَا الَّذِينَ سَبَقُونَ بِالْإِيمَانِ. Making dua for all the believers, the ummah is solidified in your heart. Here we are right now. We haven't been to Gaza, hardly any of us has been there, and yet we're constantly making dua for them. Our hearts are attached to them. Making dua for others, it solidifies the bonds of Iman, and the bonds of Iman are necessary in order for us to enter Jannah. Making dua for others also brings benefits to us, as the Prophet ﷺ told us. We're going to go over this hadith later on as well. Anytime you make dua for your brother, Allah sends an angel down specifically to make dua for you, that you have made dua for your brother, you also be given what you ask for your brother. Allah wants us to make dua for our Muslim brothers and sisters. Abu Darda would say, and Imam al-Ghazali, by the way, in his Ihya Ulumuddin, he has an entire section about making dua for other people, and he says it is of the akhlaq of the believer that the believer makes dua for all the other believers. He has a whole section, and in it he mentions Abu Darda would tell his students, in sajda, I make dua for at least 70 of my family and friends by name. By 70 people I make dua for by name, by specifics. What do they want? I make dua for them. Why? When you make dua for others, love is written in their hearts and in your hearts. And our Prophet ﷺ said in an authentic hadith, any Muslim who makes istighfar and dua for all the believers, right now there's 1.5 billion believers. The Prophet ﷺ said, if you make dua for all the believers, may Allah forgive them. Allah will write a hasana for every single believer in your credit of good deeds. 1 hasana for every single believer is given to you. This is those that are alive. Then make dua for those that have passed on. We're talking about how many billions. Why are we being told to make dua for other Muslims? Because when you make dua for others, you cleanse your own heart of jealousy, of hatred, animosity. When you make dua for others, you solidify the bonds of the ummah. So, of the benefits of dua, dua unites the ummah all together. And inshallah we'll continue tomorrow about the motivations of dua.